We are now joined by Jeff Mann of Consider the Source. Consider the Source is performing this Thursday, the 7th, at Brighton Music Hall. Jeff, thanks so much for speaking with me today.
My pleasure. Glad to be here.
So, Consider the Source has been on tour for a few weeks. How's everything been going so far?
It's been great. We had about 5 weeks. We went cross country to the West Coast, way up to Portland and Seattle, which were new spots for us, and made it home in time for Thanksgiving, got a little bit of rest, and now we're back at it.
Your Facebook page describes your genre as progressive sci-fi Middle Eastern fusion. Can you talk to me a little bit about that description?
Sure, yeah, we just try and make it as long as we can.
Yeah.
Get in as many taglines as we can. Yeah, we used to call it just sci-fi Middle Eastern funk, and then I think that transformed to sci-fi Middle Eastern fusion, and then we added the prog in. But yeah, we're only a trio and instrumental, so one of the things we like to do is have a lot of different sounds. Both John and Gabe on guitar and bass have a large pedal board and a lot of futuristic sounds and stuff, so that's kind of where the sci-fi comes from. And then we also have a lot of influence from Middle Eastern and also Turkish music and some world music, and kind of try to mix it all together with metal and jazz and whatever else we can.
Was the Middle Eastern influence a common thread between the three of you when you first started?
A little bit. I wasn't the original drummer, but the Justin who started the band grew up with John, and they started getting into some of the Indian rhythms. And Gabe's really into the Indian melodies, and he's actually studied in India for a little while. There was a guitar player that would come to New York sometimes, and he would study with him there. And then eventually that led to Gabe going to India for a few weeks, I believe, and living and studying with him. And there's an instrument actually called the kanjira. That's a South Indian drum, and John had studied from a famous player, and the original drummer, Justin, also studied with him on this drum called the kanjira, and John applied some bass lessons, and then after a few years, I was recommended to him as well, and I started taking a few lessons, so we've all dabbled in different degrees.
The band is from New York City. How did you originally meet those guys?
Well, I went to college in upstate New York, and that was one of the first places they started touring out of New York City. So I was a student in college, and one of my friends booked a local club, and they came through, and I didn't make it to the show that night, but he came home to our apartment, and he was just like, "Oh my God, this band Consider the Source played tonight. You gotta check them out." And he gave me a CD, and I kind of kept an eye out on them for a few years. And I was in another band and actually opened up for them in Savannah, Georgia, on a tour, and kind of introduced myself, saying that I heard about them when I was in college, and kept an eye out on them, and saw about a year or so after that they were looking for a drummer, and kind of linked up that way.
What is practice like for you guys, playing in so many different odd time signatures and all the improvisation that you do on stage?
You know, we don't actually practice together very much. We perform a lot, and when we tour, there's not too much time for practicing. The learning curve was quick when I started playing with the band. It was kind of like, here's a couple auditions, and then eventually shows coming up next weekend type of thing. So I was thrown into it. Yeah, I was thrown into it, and for the first few months, it was just kind of playing the shows and trying to sneak in some time to work on stuff here and there. And then we were really lucky because after a few months of playing together, we took a month off, and we had a house that we went to every weekend from Thursday to Sunday. And for like over a month, we were there every weekend working for hours on new material. We worked on a couple things we were already playing, but that was the first time we got to really work on new material. and that started the process for like a 3-disc album series we put out, which ended up being, we wanted it to be a double album, and when we recorded it, it was 2.5 hours of music. We our skills with being able to navigate odd time signatures and stuff like that, you'd think we'd be able to add up the time and figure out it was too much music for 2 discs.
Yeah.
But we surprised ourselves and put out a 3-disc project. So that was one of the most intensive like practice sessions we had. And then once we caught up on all that and had new material, then we were able to get into some more regular rehearsing. But the thing for us is really that we just play so much. Like the tour we just did, we were doing about 5 shows a week. So a week or two into that, you start to feel pretty good and get into a nice groove. And especially with the improvisation stuff, it's a lot of it's really just from playing together a lot. We've kind of been able to guess some moves that people make. Sometimes you guess wrong in things, but we sometimes we're able to get kind of a group think thing happening where we surprise ourselves and each make the same decision at the same time, which is nice.
Do you ever practice improvisation? Like do like improvisation exercises together?
That's actually something that we avoid practicing. A lot of the times when we have songs, if the song, like, we don't really have pieces that are a song that's complete improvisation, but a lot of the songs will start with something that's pretty written out. A couple sections will go by, and then it opens up into an improv. And at the end, there'll be some kind of either a visual cue or a musical cue, and then we go back into the composition. But when we rehearse, a lot of times we'll just rehearse the beginning and the end. When we get to that middle section, we'll say, all right, we'll just give that a try. We'll see what happens. Yeah, that's sort of things rare for us. Maybe we'll try it eventually, but in the past, it's sort of been a thing we like to just keep it extra fresh. Don't even really spend time working on it. Every now and then we'll talk about it. It'll just be more of a type of thing of, let's try and get really quiet in that part tonight. Let's see if that'll happen. Or even not even getting into too much like that. We really just try and go for it.
Can you speak a little bit about Gabe's fretless guitar?
Sure. Yeah. So Gabe has a really unique instrument. It's a double neck guitar, and the top neck is fretless. And visually, it's really cool. Both necks are headless, so the tuning pegs aren't where you'd expect them. There's no head up top, so it visually looks really cool. And the fretless guitar allows him to hit a lot of the in between the crack kind of pitches. It's like if you saw a piano, you have all the keys are black and white, but without the frets there, you can kind of hit the notes in between the regular sharps and flats and things like that. So he has different cultural music scales that he knows and different things, but I forget the exact number, but there's definitely way more than 12 notes in a scale for him between octaves. There's a lot more notes that he can use in certain scales, and it's the type of thing where you might think it sounds weird from not hearing the music, but hearing the concept of, oh yeah, there's notes in between the notes that you don't usually hear in Western music. But it's really the type of thing, even when it was kind of less familiar to me and stuff, you don't really notice it. It doesn't stand out too much until he really points it out, and I'll say, okay, here's this note, now listen to that. Those are a lot closer than you'd expect. But musically, it's there, but it doesn't really stand out as strange or bizarre. It really just fits and sounds natural in the end. So it's something that you don't usually hear as much in Western music, but for us, it seems to work really nicely and doesn't really take people by surprise or anything. As far as being like a weird thing, no one's like saying, "What note is that?" or you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, with the fretless guitar, he's able to replicate some sounds from around the world that he wouldn't be able to.
Exactly, and also in addition to hitting certain pitches, the approach to hitting them, there's a lot of slides where he might slide up to a note in a lot of small little increments, and not having the frets there is really a lot of completely opens the game to moving up and down the neck in a smooth way, not breaking up the notes.
Who are some of your biggest drum influences?
Man, I am such a huge drum nerd. I
Yeah.
love drumming, but um, the list goes deep. I'd say it started with a lot of like classic rock and progressive rock. A band that's my father's favorite band, Emerson, Lake and Palmer.
Yeah.
Totally grew up on that, and Carl Palmer. It's like a kind of a superhero drummer. You know, he had like huge drum set, and I think on some tours it would be on a riser that would spin in circles while he played, and he had the gongs behind him.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and it was just the type of thing where, as a young kid, hearing and seeing someone playing a huge drum set, I would just go crazy. So he was a big influence, and especially for like the progressive stuff. That was like the type of thing where I was listening to stuff in odd time signatures before I even knew about it, or even knew how to count that well, type of thing. So that really helped make a lot of that music comfortable. Plus, there's tons of like synthesizer and crazy sounds they have, the Moog synthesizers and stuff. So that was huge. And
Right.
Led Zeppelin and John Bonham was like probably the biggest of like the classic rock stuff. Just I think every drummer loves John Bonham's drumming, and got really into Mike Portnoy and Dream Theater when I was a little bit older and starting to build bass stuff. Actually, the first concert I ever saw, I think I was like 12 or 13 years old. I went with my dad and went to see Emerson, Lake and Palmer,
Wow.
who was opening. They were opening for Deep Purple, and I had no idea who the band was. The first opener was Dream Theater.
Blew you away.
It blew me away. I don't even really remember Dream Theater's set. I just remember that I saw them, and I actually had a drum magazine at the time that was advertising one of their CDs. So when I walked into place, I remember seeing like their T-shirts and being like, "Oh, that's that band that I saw their new CD in the drum magazine."
Yeah.
And
Right.
then I had like someone like an older person I knew through some friends and stuff I was hanging around with that listened to metal and stuff, and I saw their CD collection like a couple months later. I was flipping through and I was like, "Oh, Dream Theater!" I saw them. They were like, "You saw Dream Theater?" and I was like, "All right, yeah. Can I borrow all these CDs?" And he's like, "Yeah, definitely."
And you were like, oh, that's the band from the drum magazine.
Yeah, that became a rabbit hole, and then also a rabbit hole of like bands from drum magazines that I had to check out. Pretty much every band I heard about.
That's cool. And also in Deep Purple, Ian Pace, another great drummer, too.
Oh yeah, totally. Like, man, there was such an era of awesome drummers with awesome bands. It seemed like things happened to work with bands like Rush and Yes and Deep
Yeah.
Purple, and there's just like all these great rock bands also had great rock drummers.
What's the writing process like for Consider the Source?
The writing process is very piecemeal. We really take our time with the songs and like kind of tack on the details. Someone will have a couple of core ideas and bring it to the table, and then like we'll maybe at sound check sometimes someone will be playing something, we'll all hop on it, or at rehearsal we'll work on a couple of things. It's very rare that someone says, "Here's the song." That almost never happens, and if it does, it definitely changes. It's more like, "Here's some ideas I've been working on. Let me show it to you guys and see what we can come up with together." There's been like one or two times where that's happened, and like very quickly the parts came together, and almost in like an hour or two, we're like, "Cool, like this song's almost not done, but the skeleton of it at least is coming together very quickly." But even at that, we'll have a song written, and over the course of a tour, we might add things. Like maybe there's one part where there's a pause, and one person during that pause, plays one loud note one night, and then the next night someone else does that, and then it becomes a thing. And at the end of the week, that's a new part, and then for years it stays, type of a thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, all of our songs have like an open ending forever to them. If they, at any point someone can say, "Hey, I was thinking of this for this song," and change it. it's cool because not having lyrics, you might not necessarily be able to do that if you had a song with lyrics. You couldn't years later maybe say, let's change the lyrics now,
Right.
and surprise the audience who's singing along.
Yeah.
But all of our songs, we always leave them open to adding a section or rearranging it a little bit. Maybe a song that never had an improvisation section. We've had tours where we'll say, let's add an open section in the middle of that for a solo or something like that. So some of the songs definitely take a while, and what we're doing now is we've got one more show tonight this weekend, and then next weekend a few shows, and then we're going to take about a month off and find some good rehearsal time to start working on the next batch of material, because we do have a lot of ideas that have been floating around, but we haven't given ourselves the time to really dig in. So I think we're going to do another thing like we did with the last album, where we spend maybe like every weekend for a month or so, or a couple of days a week together, really, really digging into new material and working on it. And then in January, we're going to have only a short, like 2-week tour, and then get right back into that. So we're really gearing up for 2018, a whole bunch of new material and working towards the next album.
In the future, do you ever see working with a singer?
Actually, we love bands that have singers, but we're very particular about bands with vocals and singers. Like words are tough. We're not the best at writing words, lyrics and stuff, and we love instrumental music. But we also do have bands with singers that we grew up listening to and like love, and we wouldn't ever, I don't think, add a singer to the band and make it a 4-piece. But a concept that we have is we would really, really eventually love to put out an album with some of our favorite singers that we grew up listening to, or that we always would love, thought would be great to collaborate with. And we thought about putting out a CD that featured every track a different vocalist.
Anybody particular you have in mind?
I mean, we like to dream big. We like to think of people like Mike Patton from Faith No More and Mr. Bungle.
Yep.
Some heavier metal singers like singer Michael from Opeth is probably our favorite, like really, really crazy heavy metal singer.
Yeah.
People like Maynard from Tool. A lot of singers from bands that are progressive and have done weird stuff. We like singers that have a voice that is also an instrument too. They like Mike Patton. Like Mike Patton, for instance, he can sing amazing stuff, but he also uses his voice in like kind of sound effect ways, makes weird sounds, and can get into different like character voices, like soundtrack sound. And the singer from Opeth he can sing beautiful, beautiful melodies, with an acoustic guitar, but then he can also scream like a scuffly growl that'll give you chills and stuff like that. So the same way that we can make different sounds with our instruments, we love vocalists that have that ability,
All right. Well, we're all looking forward to the show next week at Brighton Music Hall. Jeff, thanks so much for speaking with me today, and good luck with the rest of 2017.
Thanks, and that show's going to be really special. We've got You Bred Raptors opening up, who we just played with last night in Baltimore. They're an amazing instrumental trio, and then we also have Screaming Headless Torsos, who's an incredible band. They've been around since like the 90s, and we've been fans of them forever. So that's going to be a great night.